Welcome to the podcast. This show is entirely dedicated to the wisdom and the stories of people embracing their true and extraordinary nature, of overcoming, breaking through limits, tapping into universal wisdom, and hopefully inspiring you to do the same. Okay, welcome back to Being Extraordinary. We are in Cancer season, as it were, and I just feel the need to say that I am tired. Cancer season is definitely not my season. Every year I struggle. I have some positive placements in Cancer, but I also have some difficult placements in Cancer. So it's always a bit of a struggle for me, but I am here. We are doing a podcast episode, and I am very happy to report that I actually have had a ton of requests from listeners about certain topics that they want to hear me talk about on the podcast, which I love. I love, love, love. I do have my own creative ideas about what I want to talk about, but if you've ever done a course with me or listened to this podcast avidly or done a session with me, I always encourage questions and feedback because I am so immersed in the spiritual world that sometimes I forget what it's like to be on the other side trying to piece things together. I can't remember how I got to where I am, all the questions that I asked, all the things that I've clicked together. So when somebody asks a question, it gives me so much perspective and insight. Okay, this is a thread that we could spend some time explaining or talking about. So I had so many requests for topics. And I am super excited about that because it helps me get excited to talk about something instead of me overthinking what to say. So, ironically, one of the most requested topics is actually about death, talking about, what is death? Why do we write it in? Why does it happen in certain ways? But I'm not talking about that today. I do want to dedicate an entire podcast to death, but I was thinking it's summer. Do people really want to talk about death in summer? So I'm pushing it off, although I do feel like it was a sign from the universe because it came up from multiple people actually. So we will be talking about that, but in a future episode. But what we're going to talk about today is actually about how we map or plan our soul's journey before we arrive on earth and why things kind of look the way that they do. So the question really had come in like this. The writer had asked me, how do we choose what's going to happen in our life? She said specifically, how do we choose our family? Is this a soul group that we consistently reincarnate with? Is this random? Does it change? How do we choose them? She also had asked about disease. Why does disease happen? Why do bad things happen? Or why does hardship happen in our incarnation if we're the ones kind of writing it? And one of the things she had mentioned was that she had trouble reconciling certain things. She had said in the spiritual community, she hears a lot about things are unfolding exactly as they should, and you won't miss what's meant for you. And she said, that's great, but how does that align with things like disease or hardship on our path? I can't seem to reconcile those pieces of things. And I had actually had on my list of personal topics that I wanted to talk about is why do bad things happen? So, what we're talking about today is how and why we map certain things for our life, including the good, the bad, the ugly, and how is it that we are still on track even on those worst days? And it's a really great question. I thought, yeah, you're right. There are a ton of spiritual cliches that really give this sense of comfort as we walk our journey to say, oh, it's unfolding as it should, and you won't miss what's meant for you, and all these things. But then it just feels kind of too fluffy and light when you're going through something really difficult and you don't know why. So I'm going to take us on that journey. And of course, it is convoluted. I am also going to talk about disease in an entire episode dedicated to itself because she actually asked about disease specifically as another topic. Why do certain diseases happen? What are we supposed to do with it? But I'm going to talk about the grand zoom out, and we'll kind of then in subsequent episodes look at certain things like death or disease. Why do these things happen? But from this bird's eye perspective, what exactly are we doing here? So, of course, as I mentioned, it's a little bit convoluted and there isn't necessarily a really simple, easy answer for a bird's eye perspective to really understand it all. It also takes you have to realize everybody's working on different things. So it's not going to be a one size fits all approach, but I'll do my best. So, first and foremost, what we have to realize is when we're mapping our plan for Earth, we are doing it with our highest consciousness. So, our soul selves without the human limitations of not remembering what we are and not being able to see things from that bird's eye perspective. So, the all knowing, incredibly wise version of us is the one making the plans. And our spirit team and our council is there to help us make sure that we're making good plans. So, we have all these advisors, these soulful teachers that exist on the other side that help us craft a life that's going to be what we need it to be. And nobody tells us what it is that we need our life to be. How are we going to determine where to start? Well, there's going to be two kind of points. So if it's your first ever life on earth, you're going to just craft a soul plan based on what you want to experience. Maybe you want to experience what courage feels like. But to truly understand what courage feels like, you have to feel fear first, right? Courage happens on the other side of fear. So then you have to create these storylines where there's going to be fear, hardship, people are going to cower away, and you're going to have to be the courageous one who takes up all that space and goes on the journey. Maybe you want to know what it's forget what love is, and you want to, and then how to process that pain. Because if all you know is love and you are looking down on earth and you see people really struggling with grief or loss or fear, it probably would be pretty easy to judge that and be like, look at these people totally forgetting what love is, and look at how much grief and anger and fear drives their lives. And we might be like, I'm kind of judging that. I'm judging what it's like to feel fear, and what I judge, I must become. So then we put ourselves into those situations where we're going to feel the fear that we witness in someone else and see how we handle it. So when we come to earth for the very, very first time, it's just what you want to experience. And trust me, we want to experience it all. I think I've said this before, but on the spirit side, all there is love. So when we come to earth, we want to experience what grief is like, what loss, what love is like on earth, what courage is like, what all of these different emotions, all these different experiences. And even though we say, why would someone want to experience grief? Well, you also have to remember that we're eternal. So there's nothing but time to just explore what's out there. And at a certain point in your soul's evolution, you're probably going to be bored of light, fluffy, easy, all there is love. Your soul wants to grow and experience a new depth of who they are. And when I say a new depth of who they are, it means to say, I want a bigger challenge. I want to see what it's like to walk through grief, which is really, really far away from love. And I want to see what I'm made of. I want to see if I can do it. And I'm going to add to my soul's experience, my soul's resume, if you will. And at a certain point, we're giving ourselves the challenge intentionally. So if you're coming to Earth at all, your first rendezvous on Earth, you already are signing up for an advanced lesson, because Earth is naturally a challenging place to incarnate. Why is Earth a challenging place to incarnate? There are several reasons. Number one is that Earth is a place where the first thing that happens when you descend down to Earth is you drink from the waters of forgetfulness. So when you arrive here, even though you have a plan, even though you're eternal, even though all you are and all you know is love, while you're here, the name of the game is that you will forget it and see how long it takes you to remember. So if that's the whole matrix, that's the whole way that it's set up, well, you're already starting in a very challenging place that's very different and far away from what is true for our soul. So that's one reason it's naturally a challenging place. Reason number two is Earth is a realm of duality where we can only understand Earth through opposites. So to know what love is while we're on Earth, we have to actually experience the lack of love, which is maybe fear or hatred or, I don't know, isolation. To understand acceptance, we have to understand what it's like to be banished or judged or exiled. To feel and understand what it's like to be understood, we have to first be misunderstood. So the whole point on Earth is to polarize yourself from each extreme so that you can understand what your soul is, which is love and community and acceptance and understanding, versus what your soul is not, which is the opposite. So we have to just naturally swim back and forth from all these polarities to understand. So that's Earth in a nutshell. And two or three, the third thing that's really challenging about Earth is we have massive emotional bodies. On other worlds, and even as a spirit, we don't have the gamut of emotions that we have on Earth. So there's kind of, with all that wisdom and knowledge that we have, emotions don't, well, even just think about it. If everything's perfect and roses and beautiful on the other side and all there is love, well, all you really feel is love and understanding because of the wisdom, because of all there is love. So then when we come to Earth naturally, the gamut of emotions that we can feel here is extreme. And I've read hypnosis scripts where that has consistently been said, where why is Earth challenging? Well, it's because of the massive amount of emotions that we can feel here. It's just uncanny. So we can feel grief, loss, guilt, love, all at the same time, actually. We can feel grief, loss, guilt, like all of these things all at one time, which adds to the confusion. So the ability to feel extreme bliss to extreme sorrow is just huge. And so that makes it extra challenging because emotions are so overwhelming and painful and confusing at times that it just adds a little extra spice to being on Earth. So, first things first, first rendezvous on Earth, you already are coming down for a challenge. And that's why you're here, to see what you're made of, to see what you can do, to see what positive impact you can leave, to see if you can remember what love is despite being in a place where it's kind of hard to remember. You got to look for it, you know? So that's part one of our soul's contract. But let's be honest, you're probably not on your first rendezvous on Earth. So this is where all of a sudden things get a little bit more complicated than just, oh, what do you want to experience? See what you're made of. Although that undercurrent doesn't go anywhere. You're still here to do those things. But now you have the reincarnation karma that's being added in to what you need to sort out in your life. And it starts to color in this picture of why you choose the things that you do, your parents or a disease or the hardship, etc. So when we're later down the line and we've been on Earth a few times, now we have karma. What is karma? Karma is the parts of our journey so far where we have self-abandoned. It is where we have said, I will accept this because I believe that's all I'm worth. When really, of course, we're worthy of everything. So it's when someone told us that we weren't smart enough and we believe them. So then we just stopped our journey right there. This is all I can do. This is all I can achieve. My dreams are out the window. Or when it's really the parts where we self-abandon, right? So when we die and we look back at our journey, we say, I spent 25 years walking my path, but the rest of the life, so the other 75 years or however long we lived, I was not living up to the full potential that I wanted to because I was a woman and I was told that women didn't matter, or I was in this situation and it really crumpled my self-worth and I just gave up on myself. And so then we look at that and we're like, all right, that cannot do. I must get through that moment and that storyline of where I self abandoned, and I must continue on my journey to love and acceptance and remembering that all we are is love. So, wherever we got hung up in the next lifetime, we will rewrite that obstacle in again, but this time we will face it and hope to prevail, hope to move to the other side and sort of pass our own tests. And so we must rewrite the places where we self abandoned from our other lifetimes. And this will naturally begin to explain why certain negative things happen. So let's say in your past life, you were born, it was, in the 30s or something, maybe the 40s and or older and you were born a woman, and at that time maybe women were seen as people who didn't work, weren't smart. Their main objective was to get married and have kids and serve their husband, but perhaps that's not what your soul's truth is. Your soul's truth wanted to become a university professor. You wanted to study, you wanted to be engaged in wisdom and share it with others. And you were not permitted to do that as a woman. So when you look back at your life, you're going to be like, ooh, okay, I was told I couldn't. Society really crushed that pressure. And I just accepted my fate, even though it was not nourishing or fulfilling to me. So then what you're going to do in your next life is you're going to write in being born to a place or a time or around people, family members, a society, a religious type of background that's going to basically pressure you into the way that it was in the past, where there's going to be these narratives and these expectations around you that you're not a scholar, that your best role is to be a wife and mother and serve your husband. Because to pass a point in the story, to pass that test where we abandoned ourselves, you don't get to just come into your next life and everything's perfect, because what did you learn? You didn't learn or remember anything. You gave yourself a get out of jail free card. And that doesn't even align with the whole original intention for coming to Earth. So we then rewrite it in, and we're born to very traditional, maybe religious parents who are always encoding us and subliminally influencing us that that's our value. So we have to face the obstacle again. But this time be like, I don't know, maybe it's not the 40s anymore. And now it's in the 2000s. And you're like, okay, I know I can become a scholar and I have to choose that for myself. No one can choose it for me. So you might plan to get married young in that storyline and have sort of a patriarchal suppressive relationship. Your relationship might be borderline abusive, where your husband's trying to control you and doesn't want you to work and constantly says his will is the only will. And then when you're 40 or 35 or something, you'll be like, oh my God, this is excruciating. And you'll get the divorce, and then you will finally be set on your path to become a scholar. You'll go back to school, and you might start a little bit later in life, but you will write the ending that you wanted in the first place. So do you see how, if you don't remember your past lives and what you're sorting out from the past, that can be a really, when we're just stuck in our limited worldview and all we know is the life that we're in right now, getting married to a kind of abusive, controlling partner and having to get a painful divorce when you're 35, maybe there's kids in the mix too. It looks like this horrific piece of the storyline. It looks like, why did I have to choose this husband when he didn't love me and didn't support my dreams? Or why did I have to be born to these parents who didn't ever see my worth was more than just being a wife and a mother? And I'm not saying that if you're a wife and a mother that your role doesn't matter at all, because obviously we need more caregivers in this world and people to create a safe sanctuary in the home. If that's what you're doing with your life, honestly, kudos to you, because we freaking need it. But maybe this is just an example of karma, okay? So why was I born to those parents who could never see that my worth was beyond supporting a man or being a mother or whatever? And then why would I choose these people? And it looks so, so negative. But when you zoom out and you look at what's going on, of course, you can't remember, but we zoom out and look at what's going on. You're right on time, baby. That divorce and that original marriage had to happen so that you could be the hero of your story, that you could find that courage that you came here to experience to say, I'm more than this, and face the obstacle and get the happy ending that you wanted. And so sometimes we choose our parents and choose our certain partners in our life simply because we personally have something to work through, and they're going to create the atmosphere that we need to sort of repeat, but then rise. So in this particular case, with this random example, it could be either or. Did she choose those parents that were going to really push her into this suppressive, submissive lifestyle because they are part of her soul family? And did she contract them in to play sort of the villain in that way for her? Or did she randomly see a set of people that she was like, those people, ding, 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 they will create that environment that I'm searching for? And it's just kind of random. It's not a one size fits all. It's equally as likely that her parents were a part of her soul family, and she was like, okay, we kind of have some karma and we can all work this out. And it could be part of the soul cohort, and they are part of her soul family. And it's also just as likely that they're just random people, and she's seen the opportunity that they would create that environment. She's like, I'm in there. Take me to that environment. It's one or the other. The only thing I'll say to clarify that is that nobody's really random, because we all come from creator. So we're all brothers and sisters in humanity. So nobody's really random. Nobody's really a stranger to you. We are all God. We are all siblings. So in that sense, nobody's really random, but it could be the first time ever incarnating with them, and they might not really be a part of your soul pod, and it might be totally, totally random. I've seen it happen both ways. And if you want to just peel back a couple layers about, okay, well, let's say they are a part of my soul pod and we reincarnate all the time. Well, how did I scam them? How did I get them to sign up to play that role in my life? Well, again, it's super unique depending on what every soul is so unique, right? So exactly why or how we could get them to play that role in our lives, if they are a part of our soul pod, is again, well, who are you? What are you working on? What kind of old karma do you have? It's not a one size fits all. But here are some examples of how she could have pulled people from her soul pod and asked them to be her parents in that lifetime and play this type of role. The storyline would have to be karmically beneficial for all people involved. So the two people that were her parents, maybe they constantly on earth are super closed minded and controlling. And then they were like, you know what? This is going to work out perfect because we need a wake up call to believe that there's a different way. And why don't you be our daughter who needs to kind of start out in this suppressive environment? And what's going to happen is we're going to suppress you. You're going to marry somebody that's abusive and controlling. And then you're going to go against the religious or social context that we raised you in, and you're going to get that divorce when you're 35. You're going to go back to school and be a scholar. And what's going to happen is you're going to get the perfect environment that you need when you're a child in order to repeat that story long enough to rise up out of it. And then what you're going to give to us when you choose to rise up out of it is that we're going to be disappointed, we're going to be upset, but then we're going to see you go on your path and how happy you are, how successful you are. And we are going to then have this opportunity to open our minds and expand our understanding of what's possible and what women can do in this life. And so then it's sort of this eventually mutually beneficial journey. But the thing is, with karmic journeys like that, it doesn't usually make sense until the very bitter end, right? This woman who we're talking about, she's a made up person, but I've seen stories like this for sure. This woman, she's probably going to be, if we're imagining the story, she's getting divorced at 35. She's going back to school. She's going to have to study for maybe 4 to 6 years, who knows? And then she has to build her career. So she may not even see her karma unravel itself till she's 55, 60. Maybe her parents are already on their deathbed, right? So it takes a long time on the story and the plot for us to tie up all of our loose ends. So it's really easy to be, 35, 50 and be like, well, what the hell is all this? We're not far enough into the storyline to see, right? And so that would kind of be, in a nutshell, the best I could do is an example for what's going on with our soul plan. So that sort of circumstance just really applies to all these different types of karmic journeys, whatever that personal thing is where you personally self-abandoned in your past lives. There is a plethora of places where we self-abandon. Being a woman is just a really obvious one because women have notoriously not had a ton of power and control. So then we just accept our fate because we were told, well, you're kind of property. You're not really a human, right? Or any other sort of storylines of disenfranchisement, slavery, or the class system back in the medieval times where you're born in the slave class and that's it. You're born into royalty and that's it. You can't earn or grow. So we would accept these social narratives, religion, very religious backgrounds, very limiting. Whatever they told you your capacity was, you just accepted it, right? Or men in past lives were basically you can't feel emotions, you can't love things. And one of the biggest things that men deal with is this karma that they're disposable because they're always sent to war. If you think about medieval times, I mean, all they did was fight and defend and protect and conquest. And it was hazardous and this disposable energy that I don't matter. People don't value me. I'm only as valuable as what I accomplish. So everybody has these like limiting storylines, usually based on societal standards. And we just have to keep repeating till we rise, repeating till we rise. And as time evolves, so if we're not in the medieval times and now we're in 2026, well, you just put a modern spin on the same limiting belief or the same self-abandoning moment. And that is often why these bad things always happen, because they're actually somewhere that we accepted a fate that was less than desirable in a past life, and it's coming at us again till we choose the alternate happy ending. And I would say that's a nice way to close, the simplest term, that's a nice way to close that out. But life's convoluted, so let's peel back the next layer. So the next layer that we can pull back is, maybe bad things that don't look exactly like that. Maybe it's bad things that it's getting into a car accident and being partly paralyzed. Maybe it's watching a loved one go through an extreme amount of mental health issues. Maybe it is a controlling or manipulative maybe it's just this one-off event, where it was a car accident, or why did we have to live through 2020, or all these kind of just random bad things. Why did we get mugged? Why did we get hacked? Why did we get conned? Why do these things happen? And they just kind of feel this one-off negative thing. So just remembering that it's an onion layer. So they all layer together in this really intricate puzzle. To talk about these one-off bad events doesn't change what we just talked about in the karmic repeat until we rise. This is just another piece of it. So these one-off negative events, again, it's convoluted, but sometimes these one-off negative events are these life-altering moments that are kind of a wake-up call. So let's say you are the woman in that abusive relationship, but you've kind of resigned to your fate. You're not as uncomfortable, you don't like being abused. It obviously sucks to be in control, but you're so kind of brainwashed from your upbringing, and you still don't believe that you're worth anymore. You still don't believe it. And you're not even looking at the dreams that you had set out for yourself, which was to be a scholar. Well, your whole life's purpose was to rewrite the happy ending. And if you're 35 and you're not even thinking about a divorce yet, and you're just accepting, well, you're going to repeat the negative path again. So then these banger kind of events have to come into your life, and they give you this wake up call. If you're not going to wake yourself up and really ask yourself those questions because you're married to an abuser, well, then you're probably going to get, maybe a car accident. And that's going to be a wake up moment where, let's say you're in the hospital and your husband is simply just angry at you because you're not there to take care of the kids. And then you're going to be like, whoa, I can't even walk right now. This is a lack of sympathy. So then do you see how the compression comes in and makes it heavier? Because it's trying to break you and wake you. So sometimes these bad events in our life happen because we are simply not paying attention and we need the alert. So that's why random bad events happen. It's an alert system to try to get your attention, to get you to take that positive path. There's some exceptions to that rule. You and what seems to be a random stranger. So let's say in a past life, it's still this woman married to this shitty man, and you're driving on this long highway drive and you end up witnessing a car crash, and you're the first person on the scene, and you pull over, you call 911, and you end up having to give this statement to the police of what happened. You happen to see, maybe it was a hit and run, and you saw the license plate and you tell the police, and you play this really massive role in sort of saving someone else's life and bringing justice to the moment by being able to tell the police what really happened when maybe they would have suffered memory damage or whatever. But then what happens is we always want to karmically balance things. So whoever that person is that you saved by being the first person on the scene, well, now you guys are karmically enmeshed, because you did something really powerful for that person. And so what will happen is in the next lifetime, just for an example, it's not always like this, but you and this person now have karma, and this person probably feels like they want to pay you back. If they don't have to, but they might want to. They're like, I really want to do a good deed for you in your next life. And then we can say that we sort of balance the karma, right? And it's just for fun. You're not contracted into it. This person probably, you changed their life. And they're probably like, I want to help you change yours in the next time. So you could rewrite this in any way. They could have been the doctor that you saw and helped you deal with an issue. This person could be anyone, but it's not unlikely that the next time you're in a car accident and they're the first person on the scene, and they help you bring to justice something that was unbalanced. Or this is super common with healers and victims. Let's say you're a nurse at a hospital and you were the person on the scene who helped that person, like you brought them back to life, Well, in the next lifetime, it's not uncommon that that person might have somehow be in a healing position in your life. Maybe they'll be your mental health counselor. And it's so cool how we are so connected, and we always want to pay each other back for whatever good deeds. And it's just willingly, it's just we desire to. I want to be there for you the way you were there for me. So then you get in this accident so that you can remedy this karma. Maybe that's an extreme example. But usually, regardless, it's going to be a wake-up call, because you are going to accept a fate that isn't what you actually wanted. So bad things tend to happen when you are not paying attention. It usually happens because it's trying to wake you up. There's an astrology saying, it's ancient esoteric astrology, where when we're trying to move on through our life lessons, usually it's because we're such creatures of habit, and we love things to be what we know, what we trust, and we won't change and do things uncomfortable because we just don't want to hurt. We just don't want to feel all that grief and loss. So we just hang on for dear life for things that we shouldn't be hanging on to. So in ancient esoteric astrology, they say you will suffer, it will sweep you along your journey because there's lots of things to learn. I'm just using one big storyline, but there's so many different pieces for us to learn. If we look at astrology, just in of itself, there's 12 houses in astrology, which says in our lifetime, there's 12 different domains in which we're invited to grow in some way, shape, or form. Some of them might be more heavily concentrated than the other, but everyone's being swept through the great wheel of life. And there's 12 domains. So there's so much to learn in each one of those domains. So sometimes we have to get pressure to just sweep on to the next thing. So that's why there's sometimes so many little discomforts and little bad things that happen because they're trying to evolve us through these 12 freaking domains, right? So if we just think about the domains, there's things to learn about our identity and who we are and how we want to express ourselves in this life. There are lessons about our resources, our finances, our people, our safety, our security. There's lessons about communication and being a part of a community. There's lessons about our roots, our home, our family. There's lessons about creativity and self expression and shining our light. There's lessons about how we integrate in one on one personal relationships and how we can still be ourselves within these relationships. So, business partnerships, marriages. Then there is, what would the eighth house be? The eighth house is usually a wake up call. It's one of those places, but about death and letting go and learning that nothing in this life is stationary, that it's a constant evolutionary. So how to let go, how to kind of let things symbolically die and how we can rise again. So seeing our personal power through challenge, through letting go of who we thought we were, things like this. And you probably notice there's a shift. As soon as we get past the relationships, it becomes very spiritual. The journey through the upper arc of the zodiac wheel suddenly becomes our soulful journey. So the lower half is our human journey, and the top is kind of our consciousness. So now we're talking about our personal power and how to rise up after letting go of something that maybe we hung on to too tightly. Then it's our philosophy, our inner world. How do we listen to our spirit? How do we trust that everything has purpose and meaning? How do we reconcile what our life is and find faith or optimism or belief, or something to believe in? How do we leave? What work do we do? What's our legacy? How do we leave the world better than we found it? What's our story? Why are we here? And then we have the collective. So how do we contribute meaningfully to the collective? How do we contribute meaningfully to others? How do we connect to our greater community, not just our individual community, but humanity at large? And then the last house is our very spiritual, kind of subconscious, being aware of the blocks, being aware of what drives us and what we think we are, but we really aren't, and how to kind of clear that. So there's a lot of different pieces of what we learn here on Earth. And these uncomfortable moments usually are sweeping us to learn something about ourselves as an individual, or something about ourselves as we are in relationships, or how we connect to our greater sense of humanity, or how we manage our resources, or enjoy our life. Or so when we are kind of blinded and we're not learning something, and we're really hanging on to something in any one of these sectors of life that doesn't serve our truth or our remembering of ourselves as love and divine, we get poked and poked and poked and poked until we are like, okay, I get it, let's do this. So that is why bad things happen. And I'm sure there are people listening and they're like, why does it have to be that way? And I will tell you that it doesn't have to be that way at all. It's not the way it's meant to be. It's just that to get a body, to incarnate here in a place that's challenging, it's important that we don't waste that opportunity. And our spirit guides make sure that we don't. Our higher self, our true, conscious, all-knowing soul doesn't want us to waste the life that we've been given. So if we're really being blind and stubborn about something, then they have to kind of punch us and be like, yeah, you're going to get in a car accident because you freaking are not listening. There's some other parts though. So that's one piece of that onion. The other piece of the onion is a lot of times how we make meaning out of our life and help others is through doing something that does leave a positive impact in others. So when we think about our purpose, our legacy, how we contribute meaningfully to others, how we're remembered, it usually has a lot to do with other people. Well, we can't always be helpful to other people if we don't have a relatable experience. So sometimes you see that actually the hardship that you're going through is nothing to do about you being blind or ignorant or naive or not learning a lesson, but you volunteered to walk through it and come out the other side so that you could hold a light up for other people. And that was what you wanted to contribute to others. You said, I want to help people love themselves in this lifetime. So then what you will do is you can't help people love themselves if you don't know what it's like to not love yourself. So you're going to walk through the hell of self-hatred, come out the other side with the medicine, and then be like, okay, I know how to do it. And so what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? Are you going through that karma because it's your own karma actually? And then you were like, I might as well make it mean something and help other people? Or did you just want to help people while you were on the planet, but you had to walk through it first in order to do that? So sometimes it's not so personal. Sometimes it is you gaining the life experience you need to hold the medicine that you're here to hold. So, for example, this lady in the abusive relationship who wanted to be a scholar, we could also look at it from the perspective, well, did she have a past life where she was told that she wasn't worthy because she's a woman? Or did she volunteer to have that lesson in life because she wanted to be a beacon for other women, who she wanted to leave the dependency or the codependency on people that don't have her best interests in heart? And that's the medicine that she's going to leave. She's going to be a professor at university that specializes in, or kind of talks about social expectations and norms and really focuses on women empowerment. She needed to walk through it first. And it could have been a different lifetime. You know, let's say you are thinking right now, I had a professor that really inspired me. And maybe you know something about their story and maybe you don't. And maybe you're like, well, she was about personal and women empowerment, but I think she had a good life. Well, in the last lifetime, she might have been married to someone who thought she was property. And her next and subsequent lifetime, that was her prerogative. That was her credo. That's what she wanted to do with her life because she felt it and it was hurtful to her. So it's not always condensed into one life. Sometimes it's stretched out through many. It's actually a quote I seen recently about this. I'll share it with you. I asked God why he allowed me to experience so much pain and darkness. And he said, it's so you know the way out when I send you back for the others. And sometimes that's just it. It's not about this personal torment and punishment and being mad at yourself for not seeing sooner. That maybe you had to walk it because you are going to hold the lantern when you have to go retrieve other people who are still lost. Oh, God. And this also applies to disease, death, is a little bit of an enigma in this, but disease is the same thing. I mean, there's something, again, it's an alert. It's an alert to something that you've been ignoring or not paying attention to or not nourishing or taking care of in your own being. And you've ignored it for probably many lifetimes, that now it has no choice but to overwhelm you. But at the same time, there's something known as the shaman sickness. And it means that a shaman, someone who's meant to be a shaman, aka a healer, a medicine man or woman, has to walk through the sickness first and purify it in their own being. And then again, they know the medicine and they're like, okay, I know how to get us out of this. I know how to cure diabetes without having to take insulin, or I know how to let go of the past that was making me sick. And then you hold that healing space for others. So again, we don't know what comes first, the chicken or the egg. It's not a one size fits all. Some people it is karmic. Some people it is just what they wanted to do while on earth, especially the light workers. And this is why, despite things sometimes looking really awful, spiritual people will say it's all unfolding as it should. And nothing that's meant for you will pass you by. Nothing that's meant for you will pass you by because trust me, you'll get a freaking alert. You will get the alert and you will be woken up and what you need to deal with will be dealt with. Secondly, you have as many lifetimes as it could possibly take to figure it out. There's no sense in trying to be perfect and overwhelming yourself. If you don't figure it out in this lifetime, you're only 10 steps closer for the next lifetime, you know? And it's all unfolding as it should, because what if you need to walk through this because God's spirit is going to send you back with the lantern to pull other people out of it? So it actually is really valuable when you ask yourself, what's the meaning of my life? What am I meant to do in this life? How am I helping? What's my legacy? Well, what is your story? What did you need guidance and help with that you only found out just for yourself? Because it's probably where you're meant to hold the light for others, whether it's in an entrepreneurial way or whether it's just that's what you help people with when you're at the place that you work at. And I mean, also, don't discredit what you're doing. you're probably already doing it. Everyone is so magical. Sometimes I think people who work in this is just a random example, but it's because I think it's cool. This is just my personal opinion. But I sometimes notice that people who work in the healthcare field often just do not value themselves. And I think it's because your industry doesn't value you. People shit on you all day. But when I look at someone's Akashic record who, let's say, works in hospice or the ICU or labor and delivery or cancer clinics, it is unbelievable what you are doing for those people on a spiritual level. People who work where there's a lot of death, those people, you don't even know what you're doing at soul level, but I guarantee anyone who works in hospice or ICU has a whole bunch of Scorpio type energy. So you're the death walker. You might not realize you're doing it, but you're opening these portals to send people home. And it can sometimes be a confusing path. And sometimes I've seen people where you just think you're a regular human, right? But in the kind of astral or spiritual plane, you literally walk beside people as they like go back. And that's really beautiful. I've seen people who work in cancer clinics that are super healing because they help others unravel their karma. They just listen to people gush about all their regrets or all their fears. And in that moment, they had someone who listened to them and they could offload any guilt or shame. And regardless if they recover from the cancer or they don't, I see it as they've unraveled some karma just for you being there. And I've seen people who work in, I can't remember the other examples, but we are all always doing more than we think. And we usually are exactly where we need to be for that time being. And so it's so convoluted. It's not a one size fits all, but this is why you're exactly where you need to be and nothing that you'll miss or you'll never miss what's meant for you. And it's because life has this funny way of working itself out, but sometimes hindsight is 2020 and we have no idea the karmic contracts, the people and why they were in our lives and how it worked out. It just doesn't make sense until we can look back upon all these experiences. In these I think it's the last two episodes, so episodes 34 and 35, I talk about that revelation in my own life that I'm exactly where I needed to be. So at all times, and I only have more insight on that too. And I do want to talk about this in future episodes, but my lifetime this go around was an exact redo of where I self-abandoned in a past life and all the things I felt guilty or shameful about or that I felt were a disadvantage to me ended up needing to be there so that I could choose the alternate ending. And then I've also been studying the tarot a little bit and the mysteries of the tarot, what stories they're really telling and how they're interconnected. And I was looking at my own story. I was like, no kidding. And it's the story of the emperor. And I just learned this week, you guys, and it's crazy. I'm on the path of the emperor, and the emperor, when you sign up for this course and you're going to be the emperor in this lifetime, well, there's sort of certain ways that will manifest. And first of all, the emperor, very business oriented, wants to make a legacy, very courageous. Let's do this, let's build this. But he's also kind of subdued and a little bit serious. So he kind of has this storyline where he will create success, but he doesn't really know how to enjoy it. He maybe gets caught up in the just wanting more and thinking, if I just had a little bit more, I'd then be happy. I could then enjoy it. I could then relax. But he's just stressed out. And the other part of his journey is about, and to help get him to that part of his journey is justice. And the card justice is all about karma and taking responsibility for yourself and learning that you're responsible for your outcomes and you need to overcome the entire basis of my business is built on. And then it's also connected to the moon, the tarot card, the moon. And the tarot card, the moon, is about becoming wild again, right? So looking through the seas of your subconscious and your fears and your control, stripping yourself of how you make yourself, subdued and perfect and becoming wild. And only at that time do you feel the ecstasy of life again. Do you feel the joy and do you feel alive? And you can actually see and witness everything that you've built and actually enjoy what you've built, enjoy your kingdom, loosen up. And they all cause and effect in each other. And so we know karma is my favorite thing ever. But did you know that Walk on the Wild Side is based on the Moon tarot card? So without having one clue that was the mystery that is my life, I was already doing it. And I thought it was all just a weird coincidence. No, this is exactly what my life was going to play out to be. And I just did it without even knowing. And if you think about the tarot in general, it's not all peaches and daisies. There are things that need to happen in order for us to get the wisdom of that card that is in part of the school that we enrolled to be a part of. So if we think about how did I actually get involved with karma? Well, it's true. I came into this life being really angry that I was even born. And I was mad about all the disadvantages I was given, and that I kind of used it as an excuse to hold myself back, to say, well, I can't amount to anything because I didn't come from anything. I don't have a leg up. I don't have people to help me. I'm from a nowhere town and nowhere people. I'm fucked. I'm not going to get anywhere. And then when I met justice, when I met karma, I was like, oh boy, is that all wrong. I chose my parents. I chose this life. I have infinite potential just like everyone else, and it's up to me to use karma to create those things, to create the results and the life that I want to live and experience. And I could have never made that up. Also, Walk on the Wild Side was born out of my crisis. I went through this extremely abrupt, awful time in my life. And it was just, oh my God, it definitely gave me PTSD. It was so brutal. I hated myself more than I ever did. And it wasn't that long ago. This was 2022, maybe. And I loathed myself. I thought I ruined my life. I thought I ruined everyone's life around me. It was the darkest and deepest hole I'd ever been in. And I was already on my spiritual journey. I'd already opened this business, and that happened to me. And I looked back. The night I knew there was too many warning signs and too many spiritual things that happened that night for me not to realize that it was divine. But I did have so much regret, and I looked back at every choice I made, every warning sign I ignored, and obviously you just hate yourself more when you do that. But the gift that I got was Walk on the Wild Side. When I was sitting in my darkest moment asking myself why this happened to me, I was so alone at that time because I really isolated after that. So I was lost. I didn't have my intuition at that point. I couldn't see clearly. I didn't know. But I sat for so long being like, what is this? What is this? What is this? What journey am I on? And that was the exact moment that I realized that Earth is a school and you sign up for certain lessons to get certain knowledge or experience. And I started looking, okay, well, how do we categorize this? How do we categorize these things? And this is where I started understanding astrology in a certain way. I started understanding the tarot in a certain way. These scripts are partly preordained, but the hardship is in there too because it gives you the medicine. And so Walk on the Wild Side is exactly that. It's showing you which myth belongs to you, which story belongs to you, and where you diluted yourself and you're not enjoying the truth of who you are or your life. You're not experiencing the ecstasy of what's out there because you're subdued. And I got it in the most authentic way because I was meditating. I was just staring at life. It was like a blank wall. And I was like, I don't understand. And there was just a couple of things that I was like, oh my God. It had just clicked to me that the goddesses and the gods are our teachers. They teach us through their myth and their lore. Who's teaching me? Who is this? Who gave me this? And it made perfect sense. And that's how Walk on the Wild Side was born. And that's by far, I do a lot of amazing things. I know that. But Walk on the Wild Side is top shelf. For sure, my greatest achievement thus far in life. And I got it when I was in hell. He went through that darkness because now I can go back and retrieve other people before they have an incident like that and get them out of there, you know? And this is why people say things like, what's meant for you, you won't miss. You know, all things unfold as they should. And it's not because you have one path. It's not because I couldn't have got the vision for Walk on the Wild Side if that event wouldn't have happened to me. But I was being really stubborn, kind of arrogant. I was really, really mad at the world, and I wasn't listening anymore. And I needed that extremely humbling and awful experience to get me to look. So it's all unfolding as it should, not because it's all preordained, not because you have to suffer, you have to have the incident, you have to get slapped in the face, you have to get the car accident. That is not necessary. But your willingness to learn and grow is going to determine how loud the alerts have to get. So when everything's unfolding as it should, there's probably, I would say, 3 tiers of what could have happened for me to get Walk on the Wild Side. I could have not let my anger and resentment and frustration blind me. I could have tempered my own ego. I could have recognized that within myself. And I also probably could have been accepting of love, because one of the greatest gifts I got out of that is that I hated myself, but some of the people in my life still somehow loved me and didn't even think it was that terrible of a thing. I thought everyone was going to leave me. And it showed me how little value I really had in myself. And it showed me that I was worthy of love. So I was super blind to how little I let love into my life. I was also really angry because it was after COVID, and that was a really just fucked up time to be alive, let's be honest. And I was really kind of angry, and I felt betrayed by so many people. I felt less lovable than ever. And I wasn't looking in this conscious way. So I just got slapped because I don't think I ever would have realized how little I loved myself until something that awful happened to me. I don't know if I could have got it the loving way because I was really bullheaded about it. I was really blind to it. So I was so blind that that colossal event had to happen. I couldn't have got it through the peaceful, loving way. We have to remember, I'm on the emperor journey, okay? He's kind of so focused that everything else is lost, right? So, anyways, that's why it had to be that loud. But I mean, it fast tracked me. Something that might have taken me 12 years to build took me one because I was in the depths, right? I probably hit the mid range and wasn't listening. I probably had these opportunities earlier to see that I was loved, to ask questions about why things happen, but I didn't. I worked too hard, so I wasn't growing, right? And so I ignored the call to expand. I ignored the call to pay more attention. I just buried my head in work. And so they were like, ooh, she missed it. She missed the gentle invitation. So now we got to go up here, right? And then there's probably this beautiful, loving way I could have learned that. And this is where we decide that we want to learn through love and joy. And we want to trust what our spirit and our soul is saying to us and follow it, even if it doesn't always make sense. And I probably would have been gently and lovingly invited into seeing how much life loves me, how much the people in my life love me. I probably could have learned walk on the wild side through something beautiful, something gentle, but a lot of us don't think we're worthy of that. We don't trust listening to our soul. We don't believe that joy and happiness is something that is for us. We need to earn it. We need to grind, and I was certainly one of those people. So I wouldn't have even thought for a second that I could just saunter through life looking for love and inspiration and creativity, a goddess. I never ever would have thought that. But you have to remember, I'm on the wild side journey. Like the moon is a part of my myth. And so I naturally would had to come to that conclusion, but I didn't do it the easy way, right? And then I missed the gentle alerts and I needed this one. And there might even be more than 3 tiers. There could have been 27 attempts to get me to learn this thing, and I didn't. And that's why it came so aggressively. So it doesn't have to be that way. If you want a love that doesn't have bad things happening and doesn't have all this hardship, besides whatever rise and repeat you had no choice but to come into, but even then, we could argue that if you just chose to listen to yourself, chose to trust, choose to listen to the whispers of your soul and take chances on the things that light you up, you'll probably get there the loving way. And that's the way that the world is turning into. So we talk about this crucial time period where there's, the old world is kind of ending and there's this new earth and this new world being built. Well, what is that? It's the loving path. It's the joyful way. It's where karma doesn't rule our story anymore. And it's more about living in our spirit, living in joy, living in love and balance and peace and harmony and all these things. But we have to kind of shift our awareness, shift our paradigm into that after for a long time living in the depths of karma and fear and self-abandon. So we are moving into this era of love and ease and gentleness, but we have to allow it. We have to say, maybe I'm just worth that. Maybe it's time that I learn to grow through love instead of suffering, instead of being alerted through chaos. That's not the way it's meant to be anymore. I don't think it was ever meant to be that way, but as a collective, we've created this. And there's also a lot of really societal controllers that really try to make sure that we never remember that we're love and things can be easy. So it's not all our fault. We have co-created a society with these really kind of dark, suppressive, controlling energies. So it's difficult. But this is the awakening. This is where we're going, that, hey, this isn't our truth. Fear and suffering and challenge and being alerted through trauma is not the way anymore. And we need to be okay saying, hey, it doesn't have to be this way, or to just seriously trust our spirit. So I hope that that kind of helps us. Again, it's convoluted, I'm aware, but hopefully that gives you some insight. I'm hoping I'll continue just to build upon this episode because there's so many branches out that we can take. And I think I'll pin it right here. And the next episode is going to be about how do we trust ourselves then? Where does that myth live? What does that look like? Because it was actually also on a list of things to talk about, and it fits really naturally here. So stay tuned for the next episode because we're going to talk about exactly how to be a little more proactive, give our spirit a little bit more credence or say, and maybe possibly save ourselves from some of those really painful alerts and live through love. But also, as a parting note, don't judge yourself for having lived through those notes or those alerts, because it probably gave you the medicine that you're here to leave for others. And if you want to be a medicine man or woman, if you want to help people or heal people, you have to walk through the darkness first, or you're not going to have the ability to help others. When there is a lot of purging of darkness so that we can move into the light, as people are purging their own karma, purging their own darkness and forgetfulness and fear, I don't know if you can help them or speak their language unless you've already been there. So if you are going to be a healer, help people, well, your challenge and your hardship is likely where you're going to learn the most medicine. So just surrender to it, okay? And I do believe that there is a way just to lead from love, but don't judge. If you feel you're getting the alerts, don't judge it, because it's probably what you need to walk through to be that person that you need to be. And maybe you just have a little bit of rise and repeat until you move on. Don't judge it, because everything is sacred and everything does get you where you need to be. And again, sometimes it takes hindsight as 2020 to realize exactly how you walked through everything you needed to be who you were here to become, because there's onion layers, right? The onion layers are endless. There's rise and repeat karma. There's, oh, I had to study this to be the medicine of it. And then there's also enrolling in specific classes. I enrolled in the class of the Emperor. And the Emperor enrollment has certain defining factors that I willingly decided I would experience, right? Being really work-oriented, not knowing how to enjoy it, being a little bit of a pessimist. This isn't my fault. It should have come easier to me. And to get into contact with karma, to get into contact with the moon, so that I could have the beautiful experience that I want to have, right? So is it a part of the curriculum that you signed up for? Is it your rise and repeat karma? Is it just a selection? Did you pick those family members because you could work out the karma together? There's so many components, but I do hope that it gives some clarity. If you're listening to this and a bunch of new questions have come up, email me. Send me a DM on Instagram, because I love talking about this stuff. And if I don't know what people are thinking, I sometimes don't know where my blind spots are. And if you bring it to my attention, I can create a whole episode on it or clarify. So anyways, I digress. If you want more wisdom and insight about our life and our path here on earth, the mysteries, why things are the way that they are, peeking behind the veil to see the way things are created to be here, I would invite you to join the Esoteric Archives, where we take topics that we speak about here on the podcast to the next level, where we go really into these things and explore them with monthly workshops and guided meditations. We also gather at the quarter days, so the equinoxes and solstices, to share, to release old stories and bring new ones into place. So if you like what Being Extraordinary is all about and you want to take it to the next level, join us in the Esoteric Archives for the next monthly workshop.